Good afternoon and welcome to lovely Long Beach, California. Lakewood, California.
No, Long Beach. You're
Long Beach.
right. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Lovely Long Beach, California. We're here. We have two young ladies who been in the coaching business for a while, and we just want to hear their story. Remember, this is Coach Booker for More Than Just a Game. We're here with our staff here with Clay, Craig, and Earl, here putting on another show for you. Today is a special day because it's our first time we have lady coaches. You know, lady coaches are right, Coach. We have two lady coaches who have a story to tell, and I think you'll be interested in their story and their history. And one thing about women coaches, they're the unsung heroes too. We talk about the men, the unsung heroes. Well, times that by three with the women's coaches, who are some people say a dying breed, but women are making a lot of advances in coaching. And in the sports, such as basketball and track and field, and even in football. So we want to hear some of their stories and hear their opinions about what's going on in current events in today's society and fathers athletics goes. Again, this is More Than Just a Game. We're here from lovely Long Beach, California, with two young ladies. We're going to hear their story in just a few minutes. Coach McCall, and we have Coach O'Donnell. Coach O'Donnell is from Kansas, small town, 1,200 people. Coach McCall, ironically, is from Chicago area with a much different feeling than Kansas. And we're going to hear their stories today. Coach McCall, tell me a little bit about something. We're going to start with you. And ladies, welcome to More Than Just a Game. I really appreciate you guys being here.
Well, thank you.
And just I want you guys to tell me your story, and hopefully the young ladies out here and people out here can get inspired by some of the things that, some of the history. Coach McCall, you come from Chicago area. Tell me your story. How'd you get out here and your story?
Well, I spent most of my time in Chicago from high school on for about, until I moved out here. So I was probably there for about 14 years. And well, actually longer than that, 18 years in Chicago area, high school through college, and then 10 years of teaching and coaching. So I had some great high school coaches, some that I'm still friends with today. I loved the attitude that was taught to me in my family, but also just having a positive attitude. And it was carried on within the sports that I played, and with the coaches that I had, always enforced that. Whether we were losing or winning, it didn't matter. It's how we were playing the game. And that was what was really important, that I carried on throughout my life too. And then I chose at about in my 10th year of teaching, and I was living out in Elgin area, and I was teaching at Proviso East and Proviso West, and I was coaching out there, which was about a 45-minute drive on a normal day. But
That's the heat.
yes.
All right, here we go, guys.
All right.
Get ready. All right, Coach, take us back to, again, you talk about coming from Illinois and the Ohio area, the Midwest. Obviously, the system is a lot different. Tell me about your time as a player, and how did that, inspire you to be a coach, and how do you relate that?
Well, like I said, I had some really good coaches. Even going back further in elementary school, I had some great PE teachers that helped out a lot.
Okay.
And then getting into junior high, back then they had junior high, so that was 7, 8, and 9.
Okay.
But playing sports, it takes me back thinking about who just passed away, which was Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and takes me back to Title IX, because I would not have been where I'm at today, I don't think, if it wasn't for that. And it comes down to, if it wasn't for Title IX, I would not have been able to play other teams and other schools and sports, and I wouldn't have been able to be as competitive as that I now realize that I wanted to be. And so, the coaches then, at that time, of course, most of the coaches for girls were women, because that was a big thing at that time, that, okay, we have Title IX, we're getting these girls competitive, all these women coaches are out there, and they're coaching the women's teams. And then my dad moves us to Chicago. area. And I'm like devastated because I'm like, you know, I love my coach and I love my sports. We get there and I start going to high school with everybody else. Their high school is, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I was like, okay. So I go in there, 9th grade, meet this coach who's going to be my volleyball coach. And it was at the very beginning, you know, like I felt like I had a little bit more skill from where I was in the Midwest to there, but they had more sports teams within the high school than I would even imagine. So it was really nice, the different levels that they had, freshman, sophomore, JV, and varsity for volleyball. And it was great. She was wonderful. She went from the psychological aspect of coaching to the nutritional aspect of coaching. You know, what are we supposed to eat?
There's different facets.
Very different. And I really, everything that I learned from her is things that I've hoped to have carried on to kids that I've coached today. But that's kind of where I got my start, and my intrinsic motivation was helped with that.
All right, Coach Zeta, tell me a little bit about yourself and the Kansas story. Coming out here, 1,200 people, and you're literally 2,500 miles away. Tell me how'd you get out here?
Well, 1,200 people was a lot of people, but it wasn't. I came from a little town of about 200 first.
Okay.
So when I moved to 1,200, I already thought I was in the city.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had the opportunity, because it was so small, to participate in everything that was available. You didn't have to be great at something in order to participate in something. And once I came out here, I realized what a unique situation that had been for me.
Yes.
So I did basketball, I did volleyball, I did track. Those were the only sports that they had for girls at the time, but I did them all. I ended up playing in a Boot Hill, which is in Dodge City, Kansas, a Boot Hill All-Star Classic my senior year.
Okay.
And I went to go play in that, and my dad, who never got to come see my games, drove from Colorado and watched the game, and I had the best game of my entire life. And so the next day at school, I get pulled out of my math class, and there's a coach from California who wants to talk to you. I'm like, okay, so I didn't know what to say, so when I got on the phone, I said, I'm sorry, I'm right in the middle of math class, can you call me back later? And so she did, and I ended up coming out to Cal State LA to play basketball, and that's how I came out here.
Coach Julie, tell me your story again. Coming from Chicago area, the Midwest, what's your story? And tell me about some of your playing experiences that helped you segue into coaching.
Well, you know, the people that I had in my life, my parents were very supportive of what I wanted to do as far as playing sports. Title IX had just come about, and I think that it opened up more avenues for girls in sports. Same experience a little bit with being able to not have to specialize in a sport, being able to play multiple sports. So I played volleyball, basketball, and softball in high school, and then I played volleyball and softball in college. And when again, like the coaches that I had were very inspirational to me, and I'd already known from a very young age that I wanted to teach PE and I wanted to play sports, and so that just kind of was a segue into coaching because I enjoyed that, and I knew that if I got a coaching job or a teaching job, that they would probably make me coach and want me to coach, and I was very interested in it anyway, and I actually got a coaching job before I got a teaching job. So I was coaching in a Catholic high school. A friend of mine was a teacher and a coach at this high school, and she hired me on as an assistant. And it took a whole year for me to get that teaching job at the K-8 Catholic school. And then I was there for 7 years, and it was in the suburb of Chicago, and then I got a teaching and coaching job at a high school level at Proviso East and then Proviso West High School on the west side of the Chicago area. And then the snow, I was done. I said, you know what, I'm going to start putting my resumes out, and I came out to California, I did some interviews, And I finally decided just to come out here, take a leave of absence, come out here, see what I can get. And after a year, if I can't get anything, I have my job still. I can go back. So when I came out, within about 2 weeks, I got a job at Long Beach Unified, and
Rest is
the
history.
rest is history.
Coach Zeta, what is the fundamental difference from Kansas to California in terms of sports?
Well, I guess one of the things I'd have to say is that where I'm from, you're behind whatever that team, wherever that school is at, you're behind that team 110%. Okay, our high school football team, we may have 1,200 people, we probably had 500 people at a game. Okay, our high school basketball game, except for girls basketball, a little bit different because we didn't have the spectators come out, but by the time the boys came on, those bleachers were full. So when I first came out to California, and I noticed that maybe it was where I was going to school at, because if you look at UCLA and you look at USC and you look at some of the larger schools, it was definitely much more supported than the local school. But I think another thing is that kids really started, I noticed it in volleyball.
Okay.
When I came out, I played basketball, and the volleyball coach, because I'm tall, the volleyball coach was like, oh, come on, you gotta come play for our team, you gotta go play for our team. And I'm watching the skills of those kids that are playing, and I had a coach that learned what volleyball was from a book, okay? So,
That's interesting.
so coming out and seeing that level of skill that was much more advanced from where I was. Now basketball, it was more of a common sport at the time back there, so we had coaches that knew basketball. But I think maybe that's at the being specialized in something at a young age. It's one of the major differences I've seen, and just, getting behind your team.
Well, Julie, you come from a powerhouse school, Proviso East, Proviso West, their powerhouse basketball team. And you come out here to Long Beach Unified School District. How was that transition, and how did you make that adjustment?
Well, it's really interesting that you bring that up, because I never looked at it that way. I always looked, no matter what sport any of the kids were in, or whatever school I was at, it's kind of like even growing up in families, okay? So you grow up in a family and you think this family is the same as all the other families, right? So even though Proviso East and Proviso West had powerhouse basketball teams, they thought everybody was like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you come out here and, there might be a powerhouse football with Polly, or a powerhouse, basketball with Wilson or whoever, but because all of them around here are like so competitive with each other, and they're so close to each other. I mean, we had leagues in Illinois, when I was growing up, and we knew that, oh, well, they were pretty good, we got to try to beat them, they're pretty good. But we never looked that there was a difference in our skill level until club came around. Club ball came around, and then you started seeing the differences of other people from other schools. So you just think that this is how it's supposed to be, this is the way it is. She said something about having their coach learn volleyball through a book. I had a coach learn softball through a book. Didn't know anything about it. We were learning along with them. So, but then when we got really good, it was like, oh wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
So,
both of you guys are learning at the same time.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
Interesting
But
dynamic,
it's also
right?
it's also very much how life is, and that's one thing I love about coaching. It's teaching the kids what life is. It's not. It's not necessarily. Yes, it's about the sport. Yes, you gotta get the skills for this and the skills for that. But the life skills that you learn from that, you're gonna carry on for the rest of your life. I can't play volleyball anymore. I can't play softball anymore. My body won't allow it. I can golf a little bit more, but I can't do that other stuff. But I can go ahead and still have the life skills that I learned, how to cope maybe in this pandemic, how to cope with life that's, what's going on now. And I think that's what's important.
I like that, Coach, because that's where our main theme of More Than Just a Game is, to talk about what's behind the scenes. And because, we only have a short time to play this game, whatever sport you are participating in, but at the same time, there's life beyond the sport. Coach Zeta, I've heard things about you from Coach McCall and other coaches, how competitive you are and how good your teams were, and how good that you could compete. What's your coaching philosophy that sets you apart from other coaches?
You know, I was kind of thinking about that because when you were talking about more than just a game, when you first started talking, when Coach Earl, I saw him and he talked to me about that, and I watched some of your things. And I really got to thinking because, you know, I have not won all the awards that Coach Earl has won, or I haven't won as many awards as Miss McCall has won. And I kind of thought, well, shoot, am I really qualified to be up here talking? And so I thought about, well, what does that mean to me more than just a game? And so I kind of thought, okay, well, you know, life is always, well, not always, but sometimes it just feels not fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what sports does is it teaches you how to deal with those obstacles that you come up against, and how that you can persevere, and how you can sometimes triumph over those. And I don't know, I think that's kind of my coaching philosophy is that, you know, we're going to go out, we're going to give 110%, we are going to challenge ourselves to be the best that we can be. We are going to challenge our teammates to be the best that they can be, and but we're going to do it as a family. So that's kind of my philosophy.
I like that, Coach Zeta. Coach Julie, when you say attitude reflects leadership, what is your philosophy in that?
So, coming from a team sports background and eventually coaching in a individual sport type of teams with track
Right.
and cross country, I had to try to, I didn't like running. When I was in school, there was no way. But I did it because I had to stay in shape. But to coach it, I wanted to do it in a way that I knew that the kids, even though it was individual aspects of it, I wanted to be more of a team. And so that's how I always approached my track teams. You know, Coach knows that I've had 30 sometimes on my team for track. And when you could only run so many, how do you keep so many involved? And so my biggest thing was, you know what? We are a team, and we are going to be as best as our weakest player. And if we all run, and it takes a team, not just for me to coach them, because I could not tell you statistics about a lot of stuff. I know, yeah, I have, you know, certain championships and this and that, but that's not what it was. What it was going ahead and making sure that every kid believed that they could be out there and doing what the other person could do on that team. And that if they wanted to go ahead and compete in a game or a meet that weekend, then we were going to have tryouts all week long.
Okay.
But it was a matter of being together as a group, and that when we were at the games and we were at the meets, the kids would come up to me, how many points do we need? You know, and okay, our 4x4 has to get this amount of score. This they have to at least be third place or above for us to win this. And they started to realize that there was more of a strategy involved. And it wasn't necessarily about the skill level that I had, because I didn't have the sprinters. He had the sprinters. I had the long distance runners. And the only way I had long distance runners is because my PE program, we worked together and we made sure all the kids were running every day so that I had a lot to choose from. Because my school that I was at when I was coaching track, it was a K-8 school. There was, you know, I had 400 kids to choose from, period. That's it. And half of them would come out for a sport maybe, and I would keep 30. And at a small K-8 school, that was unheard of. So it was a matter of keeping the kids involved. My biggest thing is, and in any sport, I don't care if you are coaching football, if you're a basketball player, if you're a softball player, lacrosse, whatever it may be, you know, you have to think about this. Did I play well today? Did I play well? If I played well and we lost, that's okay. Mm-hmm. If I played well and we won, hey, that's cherry on the top. Mm-hmm. If I played poorly and we lost, that's not good. I need to move and do something better. If I played poorly and we won, that's still not as good as playing well and losing. Mm-hmm. So it was a stepping stone of making sure the kids understood that, hey, listen, hey, did we do well? Did you run your best? If you ran your best and we got last place, that's okay. And I want them to have fun, you know, because this might be the last time, at least in middle school, for some of them to actually be on a team. And I want all inclusive on that team.
That's a
If
good
that's
point.
one reason I kept 30 on my teams, because I wanted everybody to feel like they belonged to something, because they needed that. That time, middle schoolers, they need to belong to something. They're going through so many changes. So I think,
Helps with a lot of self-esteem.
yeah, and it, from high school coaching to coaching at middle school, I didn't think I'd make that adjustment very well. I love it, because that is the last time that you have true influence in a philosophy of attitude with some of these kids.
We're here again with Coach Ray Booker with More Than Just a Game. Again, we're here with Coach Zeta, and we're here with Coach Julie, two fine coaches in the Long Beach community, serving our young youth and serving our young kids to be leaders of tomorrow. Coach Zeta, I have a question for you. We just lost Justice Ginsburg, a great champion for women, not only just for women, for people, period. The second is, if I'm right, the second Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, a female, I believe. And I want to ask you, she's a role model for lots of people, for men and women. Who is your role model that really inspired you to say, hey, you know, this is a person I want to model myself after?
Maybe my parents, because my dad was always really, he had a son, but he was always so accepting of me doing sports in a time when maybe girls didn't do sports as much. And so he always taught me that there was nothing I couldn't do if I put my mind to it and worked hard enough to do it. And my mom kind of did the same thing with that. And you know, one year we decided to help the kids students run LA, okay, which is when they train to run the LA Marathon. So we started with a group of about 18 kids. This is 7th and 8th graders. And they have to go through a series of races and a series of qualifying events. And we ended up taking 7 kids to the LA Marathon. We took 5 boys, 5 8th grade boys, and 2 7th grade girls. And a friend of mine who runs marathons, she's done the Boston Marathon, all that. So she decided, she agreed to come run with us, and so she took the lead and ran with my faster kids. And I'm not a runner. I'm like Miss McCall. I ran because it kept me in shape for my sports. My job was to bring the back people in. And when we finished, every one of those students that we took finished. Every one of them. A 7th grade girl was the last girl in our group to finish, and she finished in 5 hours and 20 minutes. So she learns in 7th grade that there is nothing she can't do when she puts her mind to it.
Coach, thank you for that. I'm glad you told that story. And Coach Julie, you know, we talk about perseverance, and we talk about, you know, finishing a race, you know, not getting too religious, but the Bible says, for the victory doesn't come to the swift, but the person who endures it at the end. What is your most challenging moment as a coach? And how did you get over it? What was your way that you dealt with it?
Challenging moment that I had, or that my students?
You can share either one.
Just beginning programs. So when I went from coaching I ended up coaching at my own high school, my old high school.
Yes.
And then from there, I went to Proviso East.
Right.
And they were gonna have me as an assistant volleyball coach there. And I was like, okay. And then they had the head softball coach position open. And that particular high school at that time was about 99% African American, and there had not been a consistent coach for softball for them, and so there was not many of the kids had equipment. There was a lot of stuff, but that was easily solved. I was able to get funding through the school somehow to get equipment for some of the kids. But to begin that program where the kids could have some success,
Yes.
you know, it was not about winning at other schools. We come up against Oak Park River Forest, which happened to be a really very powerhouse with softball at the time too, and volleyball. And we would go to play and we get the 10-run rule every time. And if we could at least score 1 run, so I said, if we just get one person on base, I'm happy. But they didn't have the concept of what softball was even like. So getting that teaching when you have this amount of time and you need to have this amount of time to try to teach what they need to know to play the game, that was very challenging for me. The other part that's really interesting is especially with track, is when I was at Jefferson, we had, I had this one team and we had quite a few kids on it, and this one girl who was really, really fast, probably one of my best sprinters that I had ever had. But I didn't know how to coach her very well, and I'm sitting there like trying to look up stuff and how can I get her to run faster in this. Well, she ends up getting first place in her heat, but I didn't know much about it. I had just started coaching track. I thought that was it, right? So all of a sudden they call for the finals. And she was already had her shoes off. She was like ready to go home with her mom. And I'm like, you have to go, you have to go. And she's like, oh, but I thought I won already. No, you gotta go. So she gets her shoes on. I'm like, all right, now just get down there, get out of the blocks, boom, boom, boom. I knew from her times and from seeing everybody else that she was in the middle of the pack. So I would be happy if she got in the middle. And she's like, Miss McCall, I'm not gonna do very well. I said, you are gonna do the best. You are the best out here. You got first in that last heat. You're gonna do it this time. You're gonna get out there and go. She gets in those blocks. She goes ahead. She gets up. The gun goes off. She pushes out of the block, falls flat on her face. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm like, oh gosh. And so she gets back up and she starts running and sprint. I'm telling you, everybody else is about halfway down on the 100. And she is already running. She passes everybody, wins. And that, for me, I was like, the power of belief. But it wasn't her belief at that moment. It was the belief that I tried to instill with her, but I didn't know if it would catch a hold. I was just hoping that she would just listen to me that one time, and it worked.
Coach McCall provides a shining example with Coach Zeta's example of how important coaches are to kids. We know that all the kids aren't going to go to the Olympics. We know they're not going to go to the pros, but it's a matter of how they believe in themselves. And the psychological value of our coaches and the importance of our coaches today are so important. And Coach Julie provides a shining example that this girl fell down and just persevered. And that may be the most important race in her life, because that race right there springboarded her to bigger and better things. And that's our job with our coaches. And leading into that question, Coach Zeta, being a female coach, female athlete, help some of these young ladies that may be listening to this. Tell them about a situation where you know that you were being misjudged or maltreated because you were female, and how did you deal with that?
I am not even sure. I know there's probably been multiple times in my life that I have been misjudged as a female. But my dad, I don't know, I have that faith in myself that I don't care what you say or what you think. If I know I can do it, then I'm not really going to listen to you. So what I would say to you girls, if there's something you want to do, if there's anything that you want to do, whether it's sports or academics or whatever it happens to be in life, don't let anybody tell you can't, okay? You believe in yourself, you believe that you're worthy because you are, and you just do it.
How are you dealing with COVID right now, Coach Zeta? You're dealing with COVID. We got lots of pandemics going on. We have the civil unrest. We have the pandemic economically. We have so many different things. Our kids are not in school right now. I mean, we as coaches, we organically want to be around kids. This is what we're here for. We're coaches. We're mentors. How are you adjusting to that and these changes?
That's a great question. Julie and I both teach physical education. So we are still getting that opportunity to get up in front of kids and motivate kids to get up and get out of the chairs and start doing something. I haven't personally reached out to any of my athletes, but I know some of my athletes whose coaches have, like their club soccer teams or their club volleyball teams, and they are still continuing to do things virtually. They do, just different, schedules and different, what am I trying to, what am I looking for? Workouts. They do different workouts. I would just encourage them to, if you got a basketball, get it in your hand, start moving. You might not have a hoop to shoot at, then just lay on your back, work on your backspin. If you don't have the tools around your house, look and see what you do have. Go on a scavenger hunt. Figure out what you have, what you can use. Keep yourself active. Because I think that if we just stay stationary and stay thinking about what's going on, then we're just going to compound it and make it worse. We need to be safe. We need to follow the rules, but we need to get up and start moving.
Coach McCall, you talked about Title IX earlier, and I want you to explain to the audience, to some people who might not understand that rule, and how important it is in terms of the growth of women's sports and the growth of sports period, because at the same time Title IX made it an equal playing ground for girls that, given an opportunity, would take advantage of it. Tell us about a little bit more about Title IX for some of the people in the audience who don't know.
So prior to Title IX, which was probably in 1974, 72, 74, somewhere around there. You'll have to fact check me on that one. We could play as girls. We could play sports like GAA, like Girls Athletic Associations, which were intramural programs. And once Title IX came about, it allowed schools, and I'm only talking through as far as what I understand through schools, because I know it also had to deal with some other things besides us being able to have equal balance with boys in sports. But it meant that if there was a girls or a boys sport in the fall, there had to be a girls sport in the fall.
Okay.
So if there was football, and at the time you couldn't be a girl and play on a football team, then they had to have something to offer for the girls. So then volleyball came around. And then in basketball, you had to have, if it was basketball for boys, you had to have basketball for girls. And if you had softball for girls, you had to have baseball for girl or boys, then you had to have softball for girls. And then of course it expanded from there, tennis and field hockey and everything else. So it was equal footing. It was making sure that if there's even in colleges, the money that comes about for scholarships, where it was very important, because then all of a sudden girls got to get scholarships to go to college too. It wasn't just the boys getting the scholarships. The one problem that we've had and continue to still have is the fact that you can get a scholarship, full ride scholarship to go play volleyball, and after college, what is there? Right. Well, they tried to have volleyball professional leagues here. It didn't take off like it did in Europe. So friends of mine or classmates that I had in high school who were at that level, they were playing in Holland and in Europe. And after they had a full ride scholarship, one of my classmates from high school, she was younger than I was, Janice Johnson. She became an All-American out here at USC volleyball. And she was one of those people, played for the Chicago Breeze for volleyball, and then when they folded, she went out to Holland and played out there and met her husband, who was a professional soccer player, and she's thriving out there. They'd fly her back and forth. It was a totally different environment in Europe when it comes to women's sports and stuff too.
Why do you think Europe is so different? And why? If Coach Zeta, you can jump in on this too. What makes Europe and all these other countries value our women's sports, and we don't? When we have the economics, we have the money. Why is it? Why
is it that our Olympic athletes for a long time had to work jobs and train? And if you're in Europe, that was your job. And I think it's just a lot of it has to deal with, when you talk about civil unrest and you talk about the so-called socialism things, the movement, it's not necessarily that. I mean, it's about giving equal opportunity, and for some reason, even with people of color, in Europe. There still is some racism no matter where you go. There's racism within Mexico if you're a light-skinned Mexican versus a dark-skinned Indian Mexican. So there's, all in different countries, there's still racism. It's just that it's so much more profound here because of a capitalistic type society, I think. So at least that's the way that I've viewed it. And then, you know, having Europe, I mean, there's been always been pretty good, you know, sports for both males and females. So I'm not sure.
Do they
the
have
difference.
more programs, period? I mean, because we have a lot of people here, even guys who go over there and play basketball if they can't make it into
They seem to value sports more.
Yeah,
I think so
well,
too.
like even Japan. If you think about Japan with volleyball, you know, if they have warehouses, and they kind of started in Illinois with sports performance. They would get a warehouse, set it up with many different volleyball nets and courts, and they'd have multiple like tournaments every year. But Japan that was the idea. Pretty much started in Japan. They had a big warehouse, and they had nets that about the size of a camera stand for kids that were in, you know, second, third grade to play. They would get the skill level would be perfect when they get older because they learn that skill with a short net. And they could go and spike with a short net and have the same effect of what it would look like when they got older.
So maybe what you said about it just being a more embraced concept, sports being part of their culture.
Yeah, it's more embraced, and the expectations are not the same as ours, I see. You see what I mean?
But I think too, if you look at Europe and other places too, you have to look at the Olympics. So a lot of those sports were based, I would think, on and up, you know, bringing up women because of the Olympics. And if you look here, you're bringing people up to play sports for professional reasons.
For money.
Right.
And
The amateur versus the professional.
and they're doing it more for pride of their country, more so than the profit of the country.
Correct.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting topic. That's
whole nother
interesting.
for-
That's a whole
whole
nother
nother
ball
ball
game.
game.
But you know what? It's something to think about, and that's what I say. More than just a game. And you know, this is what's going on in our coaches' head. Our coaches are not just some people just stand up and bark orders. Our coaches are educated. They have a background of a lot of things, and you'd be surprised. You talk to your coach, Coach Zeta. There's people who can coach, and there's people that can teach. What's the fundamental difference?
Well, I can teach you the skills. Okay, I can teach you how to do a crossover. I can teach you how to do a jump shot. But I have to motivate you to do your best. And I think that's the difference between teaching is the motivation. And like Julie was talking about, how instilling that belief in that person that they can do it. And I think that's what really good coaches do, is that they teach the skills, but they do far more than that. They pull out the best in every single person that they have. They create the best of whatever situation that there is, and I just think you can't be a great coach if you don't do that.
Coach McCall, I want you to jump on that because it seems like I can feel your energy.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about when I was at Monroe and at the K-8 level. When I first started there, I was in 2000, and I had 5 people on my first team. I think, well, actually, I had 8 because I got to field 2 relay teams. And so as we started getting better, it was 2003 when we first won our first league championship. And we had these morning meetings, kindergartners all the way to the 8th graders, you know, sitting down, you know, the kindergartners in the front row, and we had our little stage up. And so I asked my principal, hey, can I bring my team up, you know, for everybody to see? Can we, like, introduce them? Like, hey, they just got a championship, you know? It was when we were at Central League, when we had those leagues.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were Central League championship with boys, and so I got them up there, and I had probably at that time for that team, it took me 3 years to get enough kids. I think I had about 20 kids on the team. And they all got up there, and I bought them shirts.
Okay.
And so that was another part of the motivation, is that, hey, if we get championship, then Ms. McCall will get us shirts. And I had all their names put on the back of it, and then they would have, you know, all this stuff about, you know, league champions, whatever. And so it ended up becoming something that I had to do almost every year for a little bit, but it was nice. But what happened is because of those first initial teams getting up there in front of everybody, my kindergartners saw that. So I can still be a really good teacher, and kids are motivated to be in school or not, you know.
Right.
Or kids are, especially in PE, they either are going to do the exercises or they're not. But if they want them to run, if you want them to be in a sport, and they see the success that you're having as a school and as a kid, as the kids are up there, they get to be up on the stage. And those little kids, and I remember one of my best runners, Miguel Batista, one of my best long distance runners, really great soccer player, really great soccer player. He was in kindergarten when one of my first teams was up there. And he told me one time, he goes, I remember that because I remember that was the day I decided that I wanted to be up on that stage with you. Wow. And he said, but, you know, and he, you know, the kid was really good. I was like, his dad would come to the meet, his first meet, and he'd say, I got to take him to soccer team, soccer practice. And I'm like, well, can he run the mile first, you know, before he leaves? Because I need him to run the mile. I need him to run the 4x4, you know.
Squeezing all the juice out of him.
Yeah, I gotta get, just let him do this. I mean, he's really good. When his dad watched him run, his dad realized that day that he was gonna be a runner. And so, you know, but the motivation, starting young to see people having success. So if you can show them some success in any way, whether it be, it didn't matter. I remember there was a couple years we didn't win a championship. We didn't win, but we got like maybe first place in the relay races. And so I had them have a T-shirt, the first place relay race, you know, carnival relays, and they still got a shirt. And they still got to be up there. And so the kids said, like, hey, I want a shirt. I want to run. And so that really helps. You know, it really helps that motivation. But it's the difference too between the teaching and the coaching. The coaching, you don't have to motivate them as much because they want to be there. The teaching, you have to still motivate them.
Wow. Listen to both stories. They're both interesting. Leading to this question, Coach Zeta. Told you I'm gonna put you on your toes. Coach Earl told you I was gonna get you guys on your toes. I'm warming up now a little bit.
Yes, he did. That's why I didn't want to come.
More than just a game.
Yeah.
Coach Zeta, you have your coaching style and philosophy. When you're in a tough game, you're in a tough situation. A lot of times, I've seen coaches who are stubborn in their ways stick to their philosophy, and they lose because they're stubborn. How do you do that when you deal with that? When you're in a tough game, do you stick to your philosophy or you tend to go off what your kids are saying and your players are thinking? How do you adjust to the style when the times are getting tough in the game?
That's why I like to coach, have an assistant coach. 'Cause
Okay.
sometimes that is a different ear that's whispering into your, okay, did you try this? Did you think about this?
That's
Because I
interesting.
do try to be flexible, and because if you may have a game plan, but if this isn't working, you can't stick with that game plan. Well, at least I believe you can't stick with it. I mean, if you've tried it and tried it and tried it, and they're still breaking you're not breaking whatever, the press, or it's not working, they're breaking you. You've got to make some changes. So I definitely believe that you have to, you have a fundamental philosophy that you never give up. Okay, that stays consistent with whatever play or whatever you're doing. But I do believe you have to be flexible, and I am okay. I feel like I am comfortable enough with myself that I can listen to someone else's point of view and think, okay, well maybe that's right. Let's try that.
Having an assistant coach is awesome. I had an assistant coach for almost the whole time I was coaching at Monroe, Steven Skadberg, and he was the music teacher. So many of his music students came out for track, because sometimes he would, if they'd play off key, he'd make them go outside and run. But so then I'm like, hey, you could join my track team. But anyways, kidding aside, he was a good person I could bounce things off of, and he could bounce things off of me. And being that I was not necessarily a track runner, I wanted to have my philosophy. Like she says, your philosophy pretty much stays the same with you as far as how you deal with things, and how your general outline of the game or the meet's going to be, or your practices. But if something comes up, it's always good to have somebody to bounce some stuff off of. And you have some kids that are like, oh, he missed practice twice in a row. Why? Okay, so let's tag team him. Let's find out why, where is he going, what's he doing? Trying to get a little bit different. And whereas if I was by myself, me just going to that kid, maybe there might be a conflict there. and maybe there's an issue and he doesn't want to talk to me about it, but he would talk to my assistant
assistant.
coach.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's the
then
point.
then we'd finally, but so back and forth, it's good to have another person. And like I said, it's not just, with Coach Earl, at school, even with my cross country kids, some of them will go out for his team, some of his kids will come out for the cross country team. They all, because it's a smaller middle school too, they pretty much, there's more kids that go out for multiple sports, not just one, and that's important. So it takes all of us to go ahead and kind of corral. There's times if a kid isn't doing well in my class, and I'll go to coach, hey coach, this is one of your runners, and so he'll talk to them. So it's the teamwork within a team.
Yeah.
It's the teamwork within a school. It's the teamwork that you get from not just the PE teachers and the coaches, but also the other teachers that are in that school. And when, I probably shouldn't bring this up, but when Hillary Rodham Clinton said, it takes a village, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a village of all of us working together for those students.
Coach Zeta, thank you for that, Coach McCall. I mean, I really appreciate you guys' honesty and openness. Coach Zeta, we'll be remiss not to mention the parents and their involvement. And like Coach McCall just said, it takes a village. How do you deal with unruly parents and parents that are not very supportive, but have their opinions? And how do you deal with that as a coach?
Well, a couple times I've turned around and asked them very politely to sit down and be quiet. But I have enough of a relationship with them that I can say that without that being offensive to the people that I've said it to.
Okay. You have a rapport.
Yeah, you got to. I've built that up before, and I can totally get it because when my daughter played basketball, I would say I'd have to bring an old pair of socks and stick it in my mouth and not coach from the sidelines. So I can relate with that parent that's sitting over there, and it's normally as long as that parent was saying positive things and encouraging positive ways, even if it was bend your knees, get your hands up, those are okay. Those are okay things to say. But it's when they coach from the sidelines, or for when they, especially if I hear anything negative, that would really be the only time that I'd ask them to please not speak up, is because that negativity reflects on our entire team, and it's just not something that I want my student athletes to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And normally it's just because we've developed a rapport, and I noticed that more parents are involved with the boys when I coach boys basketball
Mm-hmm.
than the parents that are involved in girls basketball, which kind of surprised me in a way. But it doesn't matter which one, if it was a boy or a girl, they could still be seen. We had a volleyball player's mom who was crazy, but it's because she loved her mom, loved the kid, and was trying to do it. But
we have to wear so many hats as coaches. We have these hats here. We're looking at. What's the toughest hat you got to wear, Coach?
Well, I don't look at it with my students as much as with my athletes as much, because, like I said, when I keep a large group of kids, some of them know they're going to be sitting on the bench. And one of my big things is that, 98% of your playing time on this team is the bench, and that could be for everybody. So it's kind of hard to get that into their minds. Like, I want you to be a part of this team, but you might not be playing or might not be running all the time, and I still want you at the games. I still want you at the meets, because you're still that person that helps to support. Just like if it was in volleyball or basketball, you can't do it without the other kids on the team either. You have your starters, but there are other kids that have to come in. So that aspect, but I think the kids knowing that they are going to be a part of something, it's important. My biggest is with parents, I think. I think when I was at Jefferson, I coached their very first soccer team that they'd had,
Right.
a girls' soccer team. And I don't know Spanish, like un poquito. And almost all my girls were Mexican on my team, and their parents, mostly their guys, the dads, were standing all the way up and down the field, like not in the area you were supposed to be as parents, and they were coaching down on that end and coaching over here, and I'm like, I had to call timeout, and I had to have the girls call their dads over and tell them, please talk to your parents, tell them they have to stay over here. And that if they want to help me, then they can go ahead and come to me about it, and then we can work it out, and so I'd have to have a translator, and so that was kind of a challenge for me. But I think I try to not look at what the challenges are. I try to look at more of how I can make it better, So I try not to look at, I don't want to dwell on what might be a challenge too much. I'll try to fix that challenge, but like I said, having the parent support, it took a while for me at one place to have it. I saw the biggest parent support I had last year with cross country.
Okay.
With our Run for Fun, we all did it over at Signal Hill because they had canceled LA 84, which was a program that we do in the fall, Run for Fun. But I had so many parents come out, and I have boys and girls on that Run for Fun team, and the parents were all there at the 7 o'clock in the morning, and they were there with water bottles and everything and oranges, and I was like so amazed, But my parents in track, I've never had issues with my parents in track. They always bring things for the kids, good snacks. They always were making sure that we had water. They were always making sure that we had enough towels to put down in the morning so it wouldn't be so wet out and on the bleachers. So, that's always been, even the sportsmanship, in track has always been so good all around, even from other schools. You get kids running the last person around, run their mile, and they are on their last lap, and they're the only one running, and every single person in that crowd is cheering for them. And I think that's one thing I like about Long Beach sports too. It's and plus the fact is all these kids that are running into this track are going to be going off to different schools. So when they do play Wilson and Poly, they know each other. It's not like they've never seen each other before. They know each other.
That's a good point. People don't understand that dynamic. Only guys like Earl and me, we grew up in Long Beach. We understand that dynamic. Coach McCall, that's an interesting but true point.
And that's just an observation that I've had over the years.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because I didn't grow up in that. So.
My best friends were from other schools in high school.
Yep.
Boy, Coach, we're down to our final mile here with these young ladies, giving some interesting points. Coach Zeta, I'm going to throw another one at you.
All right, bring it on.
You want my softball mitt?
We don't have to ask you, Coach. You just chime in. Coach Zeta, there's a lot of politics going on in today's society. Is athletics more political, do you think, when you were growing up in high school, early college days, and now? And if it is more political now, are we fitted for the times?
I would definitely say it's much more political now than it was when I grew up. I mean, other than the Title IX, which I definitely benefited as well, because there was basketball for me to play. I came out, my school was paid for by a basketball scholarship, and Title IX hadn't been there, probably still be paying for school. But I had that opportunity, so there was that political aspect of it. But everything here, you can look at the stuff with all the professional athletes. And that's become a huge political issue. It's like, I don't want to get into politics, but, it's not something that I grew up having to feel. And I believe that a lot of our athletes now are growing up feeling judged by it. I forgot the second part of your question.
Are we fitted for the times, meaning because?
Oh.
Yes.
No, I think we have the capability, but I think that we got to grow. We got to grow as a society. We have to become more accepting as a society. We have to, embrace each other and come together. And that all has become political. But I think we can get there. We're not there yet, but I believe we can. And I especially think through sports we probably can. Because we learn that, there's obstacles, there's things that are in my way, but I can get past those. I can do what I need to do. And I think that's just, we have to embrace that whole concept with our entire society. And sports gives us a gateway to do that.
More than just a game, Coach. Coach McCall, question for you. What does more than just a game mean to you?
Well, it's been my life. So the game taught me about life.
Wow.
And that I would never change anything that I did. Nothing from growing up to now. I don't have regrets. I only have lessons that I've learned. And it's because of sports that I was able to get better at lessons in life.
Coach Zeta, what player can you remember that you've been coaching all these kids? You coached hundreds of athletes. But what player reminded you of yourself the most? Can you remember?
A little girl called Ellie. And I'm not talking about my daughter.
Oh.
My daughter's name is Ellie.
Oh.
I used to coach in JB, National Junior Basketball,
Got you.
before I had kids. And she was a little thing, but she was tall and gangly, and very much like me, she'd trip on that free throw line, even though there was nothing there to trip on. But she didn't give up. So I guess I saw a little bit of me in her, in that she loved what she was doing, so she kept doing it and she got better at it. One person I would have liked to be like, and maybe I am a little bit, but the girl that I was talking to you about who did the marathon. She, in 7th grade, Anna E. And she came, I'm holding her hand and we're pulling her across the line, finished in 5 hours and 20 minutes, okay? She went on to Poly Pace. Last I heard, she was about ready to graduate medical school. So she took that, what she learned, and I'm sure that wasn't that one thing that taught her that, which certainly helps solidify it, that there's nothing you can't do if you believe in yourself and you think you can.
Coach McCall, all the way from Chicago to now, your life, your lovely home here in Long Beach, beautiful weather. They say coaching is a type of immortality when you leave. You said you want to retire in about 5 years. That 5 years is going to go by fast. We'll see, depending on the stock market and whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But Coach McCall, on a serious level, what would you like people to remember you as a coach, your legacy?
I'm going to tell you a story to get to that.
Of course, you always have a story.
Yes.
It's always a metaphor.
It is. When I first started coaching volleyball, I started coaching volleyball at that high school I told you I'd started before I started teaching, Montini High School. And I had my first group of kids that came through, and we just had a fun time.
Okay.
We had a really lot of fun time. And so, I don't remember even the names of the girls or anything. I mean,
Very
really,
vaguely.
Yeah. But I do remember quite a few years later, almost 7 or 8 years later, I'm coaching at a tournament in Elmhurst, and with my team from Proviso West. And I go ahead and I hear somebody say something, Coach McCall, and I'm like, who knows me here? Just my kids, and they're in there. And I said, I turn around and there's 2 girls there. Well, they're adults now, look like. And I'm like, hi, you guys, what are you doing? And they were one of my originals that I began coaching with. And they're like, well, we're here, at the tournament. I said, well, you're out of high school, like what? You're not playing or nothing? Well, no, we're coaching. In fact, our game's against you next.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And they go, we just had to come and tell you that the reason why we're coaching, we're doing it together. We actually got our teaching degrees because you made it look so much fun. And that we decided to coach volleyball because we had so much fun when we were on your team, that we wanted to give that to others. And so we went ahead and we decided to start coaching, and we just happened to be playing against each other. They beat us, but that's okay. But at least but it's that feeling that I had a good time. I had fun on that team. Yeah, I learned this. I may have gotten an award for this or an award for that, but I had fun. And that's what I want. I want to be remembered as a fun coach.
Coach Zeta, the same question to you, young lady. Coming out here, getting a scholarship, taking advantage of Title IX also. Raising a daughter. What would you like to be remembered as, your coaching, your legacy?
Well, I would definitely have to piggyback on Julie. The reason why I actually went into teaching and therefore coaching at a middle school was I used to be health promotion manager for a big corporation.
Oh.
And I would do intake evaluations with people, and I would have a conversation with them, and then I would put them on exercise programs and things like that. Well, and through those conversations, I found that like 99% of my morbidly obese patients, those are people that have higher than 35% body fat.
Mm-hmm.
And I never asked this question, but they'd either had a horrible experience with sports or a horrible time in middle school PE. And so when
Interesting correlation. Huh?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't something I had dug for, it wasn't something that I had asked, it was stuff that was volunteered to me, time after time after time. And so when I decided to go into teaching and then coaching, that has just always been stuck in my mind as my philosophy, is that I need to find something that these kids can enjoy doing, that they can have fun with, they can learn with, and they can learn to feel good about themselves with. So I think that's definitely my philosophy, is I want them to come away saying, you know what, that was fun. You know, I learned so much. I want to do that again.
We're here in our final minute of More Than Just a Game. We're going to wrap it up right now. Again, we have Coach Julie McCall, all the way from Chicago, Illinois, by way of Proviso East, Proviso West, and I don't know how many other schools in between there.
Oh, a few more.
And we have here Coach Zeta, a small town from Kansas, 1,200 people, who came out here on an all-star game, just on a fluke. Coach comes to a game and watches her play an all-star game, and she's out here, and we're here with More Than Just a Game. I'd like to finish with this. If you're on a trip, we should slow down, because you might miss a turn somewhere. If you miss a turn somewhere, you'll miss the whole trip. On behalf of my camera crew, Clay, Craig, and Earl McCullough, and all the people who support More Than Just a Game, we're from Long Beach, California. We thank again Coach Zeta O'Donnell, and here Coach Julie McCall. I got their names right and didn't mess it up. Again, if you want to donate, again, to More Than Just a Game, 7426 Cherry Avenue, Suite 415, Fontana, California, 92336. That's 7426, More Than Just a Game, 7426 Cherry Avenue, Long Beach, California, Suite 415, 92336. To the next time we're in a segment with coaches, More Than Just a Game. So long, everybody.